Thank you, Mr. Murthy, for joining us for MAHE's Silver Jubilee celebrations, and thank you for the privilege of a conversation with you. If it is okay with you, I'd like to start with a couple of questions about your personal trajectory,
Sure.
and then some thoughts on higher education and society.
Sure.
Okay, so Howard Gardner of Harvard University studied what he calls the anatomy of leadership, and he looked at the lives of influential leaders from Oppenheimer, Margaret Mead to Gandhi, and said that the one thing they all have in common is an arresting story, something that captures the imagination of others, inspires them to greater efforts. And your story in the popular imagination has been one of far-sighted, innovative models of entrepreneurship. So I thought we would really benefit from asking you, what did entrepreneurship mean to you when you began your career? At any point, when did it feel like success to you? And also, what might entrepreneurship mean to you now?
Thank you. First of all, let me say it's a great privilege, a great joy, and indeed an honor to be here when you are felicitating the 6 vice chancellors who have played a seminal role in taking MAHE to where it is today. Second, in some way, I am also an honorary student of this university because I have received an honorary doctorate. So therefore, I am one of you. The reason why I was very passionate, or I became very passionate about entrepreneurship, is because of my own transformation from being a confused leftist to a determined, compassionate capitalist. During my stay in France, where I was one of the 18 members designing an operating system for handling air cargo for Charles de Gaulle Airport. And then when I traveled from Paris to my hometown Mysore over a period of 11 months, there were several instances which confirmed to me that the only way a society can solve the problem of poverty is through creation of jobs with good incomes, leading to good disposable incomes. And that realization came when I had the opportunity to study, to spend time in both Western Europe as well as Eastern Europe, which was then under the control of the Soviet Union. On a 21-hour journey from a place called Niš in it was a border town between what was then Yugoslavia and now Serbia and Bulgaria, where I was held without food or water for about 120 hours. And then I was put on a freight train and I was dropped at Istanbul. In other words, I was hungry for about 140 hours. I was very thirsty for about 140 hours. I was very, very angry with the system. And that's when I went into a deep introspection of various isms. And I came to the conclusion that of all the isms, the only ism that provides a country an opportunity to better the lives of its citizens is compassionate capitalism. So I decided to come back to India, learn the ropes, and become an entrepreneur. It's because I was still somewhat of a leftist. I joined my professor's non-profit consulting institution called Systems Research Institute in Pune, where we applied mathematics, operations research, and computer science to model and solve some of the problems of large-scale public systems. And then I tried my first attempt at entrepreneurship called Softronics. I pretty quickly realized that the Indian market was still not ready, and therefore I wouldn't succeed at all. And then I went to Mumbai. I became the head of software, general manager of software of a software company there. And after obtaining a little bit of experience, I founded Infosys. In some sense, I would say my journey through Europe, my interactions with leaders of various isms in France, including Georges Marchais, who was then the head of the French Communist Party, as well as reading several books, including Mahatma Gandhi's My Experiments with Truth, Franz Fanon's Peau Noire, Masque Blanche, which in English means black skin, white mask, and then Max Weber's Capitalism and Protestant Work Ethic. Based on all these things, in some way, I became an entrepreneur.
Thank you. I guess I was quite struck by the phrase, you said it a couple of times, of being a determined, compassionate capitalist. Yeah. And also I appreciate your references to the various narratives and texts that contributed to how you've constructed your story. But of course, it's clear to many of us that one of your sustained efforts, a civic duty, if I may, has been to encourage a kind of collective debate, public debate on discipline and transparency that an ethical entrepreneurship demands. So this is something that you have repeatedly insisted that corporate India needs to pay attention to. Yeah. And I'm guessing it must not have been easy. But when a corporate ethos meets education, I think this question becomes even more pertinent. So what would be a responsible corporate culture in higher education according to you? And what might be your recommendations for fostering such a culture?
Well, I have no illusion that I would be able to provide answers in front of 6 eminent vice chancellors. There are only 2 reasons why I may perhaps attempt. One is I have been very lucky to have sat on the boards of Wharton, Cornell, INSEAD, Stanford Graduate School of Business, etc. And I have observed eminent people make very profound comments. And second is, you asked for it, therefore I will give it to you. I believe that, as Professor Valiappan mentioned, as he quoted the words of the president of Johns Hopkins, running a good university is running the business of expanding the mind, running the business of extending the frontiers of knowledge. Now, extending the frontiers of knowledge, running the business of expanding the mind of youngsters, requires an environment of openness to new ideas, an environment of collegiality, an environment of discussion and debate, an environment of passion, an environment of total dedication to extending the frontiers of knowledge. Yet, there is no university in the world that has succeeded without a strong foundation of finance, strong foundation of processes, strong foundation of human resources development, strong foundation of attracting good talent, strong foundation of creating a brand. So in some respects, running a university is like running a great corporation, but in a corporation, as the CEO, if I consulted the bright people in the corporation and came to a conclusion and said, this is what we will do, nobody will question me after that, because it's the term of executive. However, because of collegiality, because you have assembled deep thinkers in diverse knowledge areas, it's not that easy in a university. In fact, I have seen this being expressed by some of the most famous universities in the world by their presidents. So this is a technique. Only the 6 people that are assembled here, they will be in a position to answer. How do you strike a balance between discussion and debate on the one hand and a process orientation on the other hand? In the corporation, we have simplified it by saying that, yeah, we can have an hour of discussion or 2 hours of discussions. Sometimes on very important strategic issues, we may have 8 hours of discussions. But at the end of the day, we come to a conclusion and then everybody has to do what we have agreed. But that's not the way knowledge progresses. So I would leave it to the eminent people assembled here rather than, taking a shot at it.
Oh, thank you. But what you said actually resonates with me in terms of a talk that you gave in Bangalore recently about universities. I watched it with great interest on YouTube, and there you did a historical mapping of emergence of the university system. And one of the things that you said is that universities are not merely means of imparting education or creating new knowledge, but is also vision and commitment, and here I quote you, to create an environment of original thinking. So I thought, well, just as you mentioned, you've been on the board of some of the top educational institutions. I think that's a vantage ringside view sort of seat that you've had: Cornell, Wharton, Rhodes, Stanford, Princeton, among many others. And I thought this would be a great opportunity for me to kind of extend what you had said about universities earlier to ask, from a macro view, might you say are 1 or 2 critical things that we have to do differently in Indian universities to enable conditions for original thinking, as you put it, in a very sustained, sustainable, consistent manner?
You know, there is an urgent need in India for us to encourage universities like MAHE for a very important reason. I don't know any nation which has made the life of its citizens better and better and better without original thinking, without deep thinking, without commitment to research. For example, the oldest university in the world, Nalanda, which is supposed to have existed between 500 AD and about 1200 or 1300 AD. That was the time when India was on top. That was the time when Aryabhatta, Bhaskaracharya, Lilavati, Madhava, these were the people, Hemachandra, what most of us call Pascal's triangle is actually Hemachandra's triangle. And Hemachandra did it probably about 400 years before Pascal. He was an expert in combinatorial theory. Now, those were the days when India's story was at its peak. Similarly, look at the ascendancy of Europe. The first university that exists even today in Europe was Bologna. It was founded sometime in 960 AD or something like that. Then you had Oxford, 1154 AD. Then you had Cambridge, somewhere around 1240 or something like that. Then came Krakow. That's where Copernicus studied, Marie Curie studied, and all of that. So in other words, it is fair to say, and then finally, let's come to the US. I don't know, I'm sure Professor Valliyappan knows, but I don't know how many of you know that the first university in the US that focused on research is not Harvard, is Johns Hopkins. In fact, the whole focus on combining research and higher education was the prerogative of Johns Hopkins. Then only came Harvard, Columbia, Princeton, Yale, etc., etc. Now, thanks to Vannevar Bush, who in the 1940 realized the importance of research, the importance of government and the US universities working together. The research agenda in US universities took a step function. And the results we all have seen. You have television, you had telephone had already come. You have television, now we have internet, there are many other things. Why? Because while science is about unraveling nature, engineering or technology is all about using the power of science to overcome the limitations imposed by the nature. Therefore, what we need to do in our country is to teach our children, starting from primary school, at least in STEM areas, science and mathematics. I don't know much about literature, I don't know much about history, geography, that's all for my wife, but even though she's an engineer, a much better engineer than I am, but anyway, so as far as I'm concerned, I would say that if our children can be first made curious about nature, why does sun rise in the east? Why is the sky blue? If you go 150 kilometers into the sky, will it be blue or will it be dark? If so, why? Why does an apple fall? I mean, there are zillions of questions like this. So if we can train our youngsters to first understand the nature around them using theory, and then create examinations which will help them to do some kind of original thinking, I have no doubt at all that our Indian children will be second to none. Like we have seen in the days between 500 and whatever, 1200 AD. So first thing is, make open book examinations in the universities. Ensure that only those who can indeed think independently are the ones that receive the accolades from the teachers. Of course, I don't know medicine, so I cannot comment on that. But certainly in science and mathematics and engineering, it is absolutely feasible to have open book examination, because most US universities have open book examination. Second thing we will have to do is to ensure that teachers do not douse the curiosity of bright students, because the task of a teacher in a college or in a university is to address the average student. Or, every teacher is told, don't neglect average students, make sure that the slowest among them understands, etc., etc. There is always a possibility that the brighter students will lose interest in the class. Now, US universities, some of them at least, have come out with a different model. What they do is, for the top 10% of the students, which you can actually do in MAHE because you are a university, you have total freedom, all of that. For the top 10% or 5% of the students, create specialized courses called honors courses. Not the degree. The degree they will get the same. That's not the issue. But you have an honors version of algorithms. You have an honors version of physics. You have an honors version of whatever, calculus. You have an honors version of operating systems, etc. I have seen that. I once sat through the honors version of automata theory, which is the mathematical theory of computers, that my son was taking when he was a student. They were all 18 years old. And the pace at which the teacher was going is just unbelievable. And in the honors version, they cover approximately anywhere between 50% to 100, almost 200% syllabus of the normal version of the course. And number two, the examination is 2 to 3 times tougher for honors students. They don't get any special degree. They don't get any, all that they get is, the course will be written as within bracket honors. And what they have achieved by this is, they have not let down the average and below average students. At the same time, they have kept the really bright students' enthusiasm, their curiosity intact. So therefore, if MAHE, for example, can even try this experiment, one, have open book examination, second, have honest version. I mean, you can even start in one course, in one subject rather, in one subject, in 1 year, in 1 degree, and try how that helps the youngsters. What would be the view of the youngsters at the end of the course? Then if you were to sort out whatever problems that you have, then you can extend it to other courses, you can extend it to other degrees, you can extend it to other years of the degree, etc. I would say that these are two major changes that you may want to bring. The reason why I am suggesting is, as somebody said, only those who win the semi-finals, they are the ones who get to play the final, which is a tougher game with tougher opponents. So therefore, because you are already at the height of the rankings of most the universities in India, therefore, here is an opportunity for you people to extend the frontiers of methodology of education, to extend the frontiers of retaining the curiosity of children. That's the reason why I suggested.
We are in agreement, as you can see. So, Mr. Murthy, you have been very modest a little while ago about your knowledge or affinity of the humanities and literature, but I'm a teacher of literature, and I can tell you, you've had a significant impact on my field. I have personally greatly enjoyed, appreciated, and shared with my students all the publications that are being brought out by the Murthy Classical Library. This project,
no, that credit goes only to my son. I have nothing to do with that. I shouldn't claim.
Well,
you see, in his case, he had done all his PhD level courses, when he was doing his PhD at Harvard as an undergraduate. So then he went to the professor and said, look, I have done all these things, and anyway you have a comprehensive exam, and unless I pass a comprehensive exam, I won't be allowed to start my research. So can I take some, German, Sanskrit, Buddhism, etc., etc. At Harvard they said, yeah, it doesn't matter to us, because you've already done. I mean, you've got all the certificates, everything is there, and finally we'll test you in comprehensive. That's when he thought about this, and that's how.
Well, my gratitude to your son, but at the same time, the reason I bring this up is because it relates to the suggestions you've been giving about original thinking, because this project for me has been really a much needed impetus towards creating new public archives, which we need really, and sort of knowledge repositories, any sort of collective intellectual aesthetic commitments that we can do for standing by the classical texts of our culture. So I know that you said you haven't been personally involved, but in this sort of challenge, I know there are challenges and rewards of any kind of public archives, right? When we try to create these alternate sort of systems, then I wondered if you wanted to say something about how feasible is it for corporate philanthropy to be channelized more systematic into this sort of knowledge creation and scholarship support, and if you have any more ventures planned in this field.
Well, first of all, as I said the other day somewhere else, just this whole thing of giving 2% of the profit of a corporation to CSR activities, that should be extended to perhaps 10%. I am all for that. And then 2% could be given for education, 2% for public health, 2% for improving our agriculture, 2% for nutrition, etc., etc. I think that I entirely agree with you that there is an opportunity for corporations to enhance the repository of our heritage and culture. Why do we need to talk about our heritage and our culture? Actually, getting back to our past, getting back to our heritage, getting back to our culture makes us more confident, gives us an identity. And when you have an identity, when you have a better confidence, then you can do bigger things. Therefore, people who say, what is the value of history, literature, this, that, etc., they don't understand that without those things, I don't think any culture can become confident. So therefore, it has to be done. And what was the second one? I forgot.
I just wondered if there were more ventures in this direction, just in terms of these sort of scholarship support and knowledge creation. I just wondered.
Yeah. No, I think certainly. I think right now my family, we are of course Harvard produces 5 books every year. In fact, this year too, my son will be at Jaipur Literature Festival, where they will release 5 more books, if I am not wrong. Harvard University Press will be there, all of that. But what I am trying to do is, this is still at a very early stage. I have spoken to several very well-known professors of physics, chemistry, mathematics and biology, etc., to see if we can create textbooks that answer probably 5,000 questions about the mysteries of nature around us, using the theory, so that our children can truly understand the mystery of nature in a scientific way. That's what I am discussing. Of course, I have still not been able to get a person who is committed his or her time. I hope it happens, because I do believe that a nation like India, with its 1.3 billion population, with the highest density of population amongst large countries. For example, US has about 300 million people, its area is 3 times India, therefore its density is 1/12 of India. Look at China. China is 1.2 times our population. Its area is 3 times ours. Therefore, its density is 2.5 times less than ours. Look at Brazil. Brazil is 3 times our land mass, but 1/6 our population. Therefore, its density is 1/18 of India. So, therefore, India is going to have a huge problem in terms of our agricultural productivity, in terms of housing, in terms of building public institutions and all of that. We all know how difficult it is to get a land today in India, and this will become much worse. So therefore, I think we need to look at this issue very seriously and solve it as quickly as possible. That's what I feel.
Thank you for this thought. So I have one last question, and then if it's okay with you, we have some questions
Sure,
from
sure.
the audience.
Absolutely.
So this is a question that many of my colleagues also have been suggesting we ask you, so which is really, unlike our students who we know are very consummate digital denizens, we are, many of us continue to be quite amazed at the speed of technological advancements, how things are evolving, and quite unpredictable to many of us. And they're also I'm glad to hear that. And to think about how this is then impacting the workforce. So we have in this campus town nearly 28,000 students, and I suppose as faculty we are all thinking, how do we adequately anticipate and meet the requirements of the industry, how to prepare our students as employees, and of course citizenship, and we thought we'll be grateful for any thoughts you might have on this.
Well, I think that's a very good question. I'm very happy that you asked. The reality of the pace of technological change today is that it's very, very difficult for anybody, not just for non-technologists, but for anybody to predict beyond perhaps 5 to 10 years. But at the same time, your education system has to continue. That is, you have somewhere around 12 years of school education, then you have in this country 3 years of college education, but at least in the US 4 years of college education. So and if you want to become a doctor, of course there's almost endless outside India, in the US, but in India, even in India, looking at somewhere around 16 to 18 years of education. So therefore, we don't know what's going to happen 10 years from now, but we have to start preparing our children. That is our big challenge. Now, given the automation, given artificial intelligence, given deep learning, given machine learning, given big data, analytics, etc., there will be considerable impact on the job opportunities. It is not likely to be in India except in factories. In other words, factory workers may suffer, but in the US, where there is much more disciplined driving, the replacement of or the introduction of autonomous vehicles will start pretty in another 3 to 5 years. So what's likely to happen is that at least 3 million truck drivers will lose their jobs. Lot of tasks that can be handled by what we call deterministic finite state machines will be done by automation. So there is going to be quite a lot of change in the job profiles. Now, nobody can predict what will happen. However, there is a solution, and that's where universities become extremely important. I hope our regulators in the education system appreciate this and encourage more and more universities to think about this problem and find solution. What is it that we need to do? What we need to do is what I suggested earlier, and that is we would want our young men and women to become more curious, to do more and more independent thinking, and to find more and more solutions to the problems around us. In other words, the ability to learn new things, or what I term learnability, is all that you can teach your youngsters here. Ability to do independent thinking, ability to unravel the mysteries of nature. That's all what you can do. Beyond that, I don't think anybody can say, obviously healthcare will continue to be there, doctors will be required, but even there, robotics is going to play a much bigger role, as you people know, and even there, large databases will play a bigger role, even there, expert systems will play a bigger role. So therefore, machines will do many of the tasks that doctors are doing today, definitely GPs are doing today, and to some extent many of the things that surgeons are doing today. But there is a positive side to that, and that is, thanks to remote control of robots, our rural areas will indeed be blessed, because doctors sitting in Manipal or Bangalore, etc., they can, with the help of paramedics in remote places, they can bring the benefits of surgery to those people. But the reality is that it's very, very difficult to say what jobs will exist about 15 years from now, and therefore the only thing that we can do is to help our children, help our youngsters become more and more oriented towards independent thinking, more and more oriented towards problem solving, etc. That's all what we can do.
Thank you, Mr. Murthy. So we'll have some short questions from the audience.
Sure.
The first question is from Dr. Raghu, AR, Director, Office of International Affairs and Collaboration. Dr. Raghu.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Please.
very much for engaging with us. You're such an inspiration to everyone. I would like to ask you, what would make you happy in a job?
If I am part of a team, if I discharged my obligations with such a high level of predictability that my boss can sleep well, if he or she has given me the task, I think that is what I would strive at. In fact, I've done that. In fact, I had a very interesting thing. When I walked in, my boss would stand up. He would stand up not because of anything, out of his respect that I was predictable, I was dependable. So therefore, I think making our youngsters predictable and dependable in the task that they are given, I think that's the best.
Thank you so much, sir.
Dr. Swati from Manipal College of Dental Sciences.
Yeah.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah.
I'm really privileged to ask you this question.
Pleasure.
Sir, well, it was very heartening to listen to your story through your life at Europe. So the question to you is, sir, there could have been one moment when you have realized that Infosys is the way to achieve your goal. Which was that kickstart moment, sir?
As I told you, when I was treated very badly in Niš, which is a border town between what was then Yugoslavia, now Serbia and Bulgaria, and as they were putting me in the guard's compartment of a departing freight train leaving Yugoslavia for Istanbul, they said something that I remember even today. They said, "You are from a friendly country called India. Therefore, we are letting you go. And my only crime, according to them, was that I was speaking to a girl who had done a PhD from KF University, and there was another boy. First I tried, as soon as I got onto the train, a compartment, I first tried my English, they didn't know English. Then I tried my Russian, and they didn't know, they knew Russian because they hated Russian, they didn't want to talk in Russian, clearly. Because Russia had a huge influence, USSR had a huge influence on those nations at that time. And finally I spoke in French, and the girl knew French. And the boy got upset with her and with me, and therefore he brought the police, and they put me in a small room and all of that. So when they said, you are from this friendly country called India, then I said, if this system treats its friends like this, I don't want her to have anything to do with such a system. That's where I lost all my faith in communism. And in some way, my deep introspection on the train, when I was hungry already for 120 hours, and I was very thirsty, and there's nothing, and when you look at the guard's compartment of a European freight train, you will see that it's more or less open, and there's huge winds, and it's very cold in the month of February in Europe. And I had nothing to cover myself, because they said they would give me all my backpack and sleeping bag when I reached Istanbul. So I was cold, I was shivering, I had not eaten anything, and I was hungry, I was angry. And then I did deep introspection on how societies should improve the lot of the poor. And that, in essence, was what led to emphasis, but first it led to Softronics, and I realized that the Indian market was not ready. That's how I went.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Raghavendra from Welcome Graduate School of Hotel Administration.
Please.
3 decades ago, Infosys started with IT services, particularly global delivery model for IT services. But in current situation, what would be your suggestion to any young budding entrepreneur, Indian entrepreneur?
Well, see, the reality is simply this. When we founded Infosys, I assembled 6 younger colleagues of mine. They were about 11 years younger than me. They were in my home in Mumbai. Somebody said, no, we should do this product. Somebody said, we should do that, etc. Finally, I suggested to them that the best thing for us to do is to be a service company. I used several pieces of logic. One, the Indian environment, definitely then, but to some extent even today, is not a very competitive environment. Indian corporations don't believe in buying technology to gain competitive advantage. They buy Microsoft Office and this and that because there is no other alternative. But they really are not very keen. So therefore we said, best thing is to go to export market. And we said, in export market, for us to design a product from India and sell it abroad, it's very tough. It's not going to work. Because we are so far behind the leading edge in terms of markets, in terms of ideas, in terms of technology and all of that. And then, so therefore, we decided to go to services. And number two, there was an even more important reason, and that is, I said, look, even if two corporations, C1 and C2, were to compete in the marketplace, the only way they can take a bigger market share is if they created a differentiated business value proposition. Now, you create a differentiated business value proposition by and large through your product, through value for money, all of that. But at the same time, you need systems to provide better customer experience, to provide better employee experience, to provide better investor experience. Therefore, even if these two corporations were to install the same package like SAP, they have to build a layer of customization around that. And we realized when SAP became very popular in 2000, that for every dollar of license revenue that was sold, there were $2 to $3 of customization revenue. So therefore, I said right in 1981 that the market opportunity for services will continue to be there. That's how we decided to be in services. I think even today, I have not come across any nation other than the US succeed in its products. For example, SAP succeeded only when it went to US. Japan has not produced any software product. Australia has not produced any. UK has not produced any. It's only the US. Then it is a little bit far-fetched to think that we in India can produce something that will become household name in the developed world. That's where the money is, that's the reason why I believe that our youngsters should focus on problems that we come across every day in India. We have zillions of problems. Our agricultural productivity is one of the lowest in the world. Our public health is worse than, for example, most of our neighbors, in some cases even worse than Afghanistan, definitely worse than most African countries. Then our nutrition levels are one of the lowest in the world, right? Our children with malnutrition is perhaps the highest percentage in India. So there are zillions of opportunities for our youngsters to find ideas that will have opportunity for them in India. But these opportunities will only work if it addresses the consumer directly. Working with governments in India is a little bit of a problem for various reasons. I think we are evolving. I think under Mr. Modi, lots of good things are happening, but it's still depending purely on the government for your market is something that you may not want to do right now.
Thank you, sir.
So our last question for the evening from a student of Manipal Institute of Technology, Mr. Navneet.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, in today's booming business world, every second millennial either has a startup or has worked for one. My question is, how easy or difficult was it in your early days for you and your family to get a business like yours off the ground?
To get a business?
Like yours off the ground.
No, it was, the challenges today are different from the challenges we had. In my opinion, The challenges of today are even more difficult. See, our challenges were the environmental challenges. We did not have current account convertibility, nobody would give us a loan, getting a telephone connection required 7-8 years, traveling abroad even for a day required applying to Reserve Bank of India, wait for 15 days, they may give, they may not give. So, by and large, our problems were with the Indian government, Indian environment. But today, you have a bigger challenge. You have the challenge of convincing the market that your idea, your product is better than all others, and many of them are from the most advanced countries. So, therefore, when you compete here in India, you are competing not only with the Indian competitors, but you are competing with global competitors. So, I would think that the youngsters of today have a much bigger challenge than we had. Well, we should close with a question from a girl, because I think we are only more men are asking questions. So.
I'm here, sir.
Oh.
Yes.
Please.
Yeah, talking about education,
Yeah.
which is rich in value.
Yeah.
The government has introduced the RTE, the Right to Information Act,
Yeah.
to help more and more youngsters
Yeah.
get access to quality education. But unfortunately, I've been reading so many articles which say that the quality of education is so poor, and most of the students who have passed, you ask them questions, they couldn't answer basic questions. They don't know what the capital of India is, they don't know who the Prime Minister is, and this is mainly in the rural areas and the small towns. So I think the government should do something, because finally our future depends on the youth of this country. And the youth have to, only if the youth come out with if they have good education, only then the economy will be poised to grow to greater heights. And what would be the answer to that? Because it's just not enough to make some, actions like you're doing something, but it's not really being done.
This is a very controversial question, but it doesn't matter. I will answer because I have to be honest. In some way, RTE has passed on the burden of improving the education level of the poor people from the government schools to the private schools. I don't know if that is the right thing, because given somewhere around 140 million children go to school in India, if I'm not wrong, I don't think this 25% right to education reservation in private schools is going to sort it out. Therefore, what we need to do is ask how we can make the quality of education in government schools better. I will give you a very simple example of what I myself did in a similar area, not the same, similar. See, sometime in 2007 or 8, I don't remember, Meera Kumar, who was the Minister for Social Justice, she called me at that time. She's a wonderful person. I have a lot of affection for her. She said, Mr. Murthy, I want to introduce in the Parliament reservation of jobs in the private sector for SC and ST. I said, Meera, she said, oh, you have to support it. I said, Meera, yeah, I have a lot of affection for you. You are a wonderful person. You are doing so many good things. However, on this issue, I will not be able to support you. Then she asked a very valid question. She said, don't you think that the forward costs in India have been unfair to SC/ST? I said, absolutely. I'll be the first person to accept that there has been total injustice to the SC and ST people, and that should be corrected. And this has gone on for too long, whatever, 3,000 years or whatever it is, but that should be corrected. I said, I am 100% with you. Then she said, don't you think this has to be sorted? I said, yes. I said, I won't be able to give you an answer off the cuff. However, let me think about this problem and see if I can do something. So then I sat down with my friend Mohandas Pai, who was the head of Human Resources and Education Research, and then with Professor Shadagopan, who was the director of Indian Institute of Information Technology, Bangalore. And I said, look, what Meera Kumar has requested is has raised, rather the problem she has raised is a very genuine problem. We have to address it. So I said, look, I want to, what the problem was this. The SC/ST students who have passed the engineering degree, they were not getting jobs in the IT companies, because they would be given some test, and poor kids, they were not able to pass that, or whatever it is. So I said, I want to hold a special course for about 100 SC/ST engineering graduates, and I want to demonstrate that these children are second to none if we provide them all the facilities. So I said, let us hold a course of 1 year. Let the government of Karnataka choose the candidates, because we didn't want to choose, because then they will say you have rigged the experiment, you have faked the experiment. I said, no, I don't want to choose. Let the Social Justice Department of Karnataka choose the candidates, but we will provide the best teachers in Infosys and in IIITB, and we will pick up the entire expense. I said, I want these youngsters, when they come at 7:30, first they should be given a sumptuous breakfast. Second, there will be classes from 8:30 to 12:30. At 12:30, we will give them an excellent lunch. Then I said they will once again attend classes, laboratories, etc., 2 to 5. And then we will give them snacks, and we will have a 2.5-hour session where the best teachers will be available to sort any doubts and problems they have. At 7:30, we said we will give them an excellent dinner, and we will bus them back to their hostel. Canara Bank was very kind to give us the hostel facility. And we selected the best teachers that Infosys had, we selected the best teachers that IIIT had. And Karnataka government sent 89 people. Of them, I think about 57 boys and 32 girls. You know, at the end of that exercise, where every teacher was focused on ensuring that the confidence of these children was high, every teacher showed all the patience necessary to ensure that these children understood. We exposed them to various companies without telling that there was anything special about them. 85 out of 89 of these youngsters got jobs. That was much higher than the so-called merit-oriented selection. Much higher percentage than the merit-oriented. But that has been given up because that's a tough stuff. This is not easy. It's very easy for me to pass a legislation saying 25% should be given to this. That is very easy. But to ensure that you train teachers well, ensure that those children who are poor, who are disadvantaged, who have been neglected by the society, receive proper breakfast, they receive proper books, they receive proper dinner, lunch, and all their questions are solved with patience. That requires a lot of hard work. That cannot be done by legislating in Delhi. So therefore, I think we have to come to, we have to discuss these issues and then say, is this the way to help the poor, the disadvantaged and the discriminated by just passing? I personally feel that if we Indians decide to spend 2 hours every day, every one of the so-called forward caste people, so-called people who have received good education, people who are better off in the society, if we were to make a pledge that every day we will spend 2 hours in improving the lot of the poor, the discriminated and the disadvantages, I think we will start seeing some of these problems melt. But that's a tough one.
Okay, Mr. Murthy, one of the things I really appreciate about the conversation we've had is that you've always given us these ideas and then also backed it up with lived experience and just like practical tips and and this wonderful inspiring anecdote. So I'm very grateful for that. You have very graciously called yourself a student of MAHE, and so I wondered if you have any concluding thoughts or wishes for the university.
No, I think as various people said, all that you need to do is compare yourself with the global best. Be open to new ideas from anybody at whatever level, it doesn't matter. Number 3, remember that quality will not come from the quality department. In the sense, what I meant was slightly different. I didn't express it correctly. What I meant was, while the quality department is there to create processes, disseminate them, teach people, all of that, quality has to be organic. That is, only when every one of us demonstrates quality in what we do, then only quality comes. Let me give you a simple example of what we did. It was in 1991 at Infosys. We were hardly 120 people in the company. We didn't have any campus, nothing was there. We used to be in a ramshackle building called Reddy Building in Kormangala. And I said, look, I want everybody to innovate constantly. I said innovation cannot be the task of the innovation group. It has to be demonstrated by everybody from janitor to the chairman. So what we did was, we held a meeting of everybody in the company, from janitor to the CEO and chairman, of which I used to be there. We translated simultaneously whatever we were speaking into Hindi, Kannada and Tamil, because these were the three other languages used by various people. Some of them would not understand English, some of them would not, understand Kannada, etc., etc. So that whole day was spent on innovation. So next morning, one of the janitors, peons, he came to my office. His name is Chandrapa. Even today he is there at Infosys. Of course, he received lots of options, and I think he even tried to produce a movie or something, which was an absolute, disaster. But anyway, he's a good man, very good man. So he came to me and said, sir, he asked me in Kannada, sir, ನೀವೇನೋ ಇನ್ನೋವೇಷನ್ನು ಅಂತ ಅದು ಇದು ಅಂತ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರಿ, ನನಗೆ ಪೂರ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಯಾಕೆಂದರೆ ನಾನು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಅದು ಇದು ಕೆಲಸಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಕಾಫಿ ಗೀಫಿ ಕೊಡೋಕ್ಕೆಲ್ಲ ಮಾಡ್ತಾಯಿದ್ದೆ, ನೀವು ನನಗೆ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪ್ಲೇನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಾ? So I told him, no problems, sit down. So I told him, look, you are in charge of keeping 3 conference rooms neat and clean, so that our Western customers, when they come, they feel comfortable. They should be able to eat there, they should be able to sit there, all of that. And tomorrow, when you come to the office, ask 3 questions. 1, how can I do what I was doing yesterday faster today? I said, maybe you were using 1 hand and 1 cloth. Tomorrow try and use 2 hands and 2 cloths to clean. No, seriously, this is exactly what I told him. Use 2 hands and 2 cloths. So therefore, you will reduce the time that you took by maybe sometimes 30%, sometimes 50%, sometimes 100%, who knows? Not 100, 50%. Anyway, second I said, see, you are buying some cleaning liquid. Tomorrow when you come, first go to the market which is just nearby. Find out if there is a new cleaning liquid which cleans better but which is cheaper. If it is, buy that. So you will reduce the cost of cleaning. So in other words, you are making that task cheaper. Third, I said, when you clean today, just count the number of specks of dust that you leave on the table. Take a pledge that tomorrow you will reduce the number of specks by half. So therefore I said, innovation is all about doing things faster, cheaper, better. So I explained to him in Kannada. And he understood. And I have seen so many Western customers of ours, come and look at the cleanliness of the glass, cleanliness of the table. They just can't, even now it's okay, but I'm talking about 1994, 95, 96. They couldn't believe that they were in India. All because of the work of this gentleman. He simply absorbed it, what innovation is. So therefore, I would say that if everybody in MAHE commits to innovating, you have a day called Innovation Day where you give opportunity for the best 10 innovations of the university to be presented. Then let the elders and those in power discuss, debate, cost of that, budget, all of that, and then create a group that will usher in those innovations. I think if you did some of these, benchmarking on a global scale, being open to new ideas, making all these initiatives organic, that is from the lowest level to the highest level, I think, I mean, you're already doing it probably, I don't need, probably this was unnecessary, but this is what we did. Therefore, if you have not done some of this, you should look at it.
Thank
Then
you.
finally this honors course for some subjects, there whereby you will not lose the really bright fellows, they will not get bored in the class. If you try that, and then please try an open book exam in at least one subject. I think you will then see who are the real thinkers amongst your students, and then you have to encourage them to do extraordinary things. That's what I would say.
Thank you, Mr. Murthy. Thank you. Many of these ideas are actually already, we are trying it out in various of our institutes, and we take encouragement from your words and hope to do more of it. I want to, on behalf of everyone present here, all officials, I want to thank you for your generosity of your insights and for your time.
Pleasure.
And I'd like to request Dr. Ranjan Arpai, Chairman of MEMG, to kindly hand over a token of our appreciation to Mr. Murthy.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Oh, pleasure.